Welcome to another edition of Printervention with InkJet Ink. Today I have a special guest, our InkJet Wizard. We are going to do a little rundown on choosing the right printer. We have a lot of customers who have a lot of knowledge in terms of what they need for their coding and marking needs. And we've met a lot of people who aren't sure. They know they need to get some type of a graphic or code on a product or package. They're not quite sure how to best accomplish it. So our wizard here is going to start guiding us through, and we'll see multiple versions in the future of videos where we get to help packagers out and guide them along. So welcome, Wizard, InkJet Wizard.
Hello, everyone.
I guess for starters, we're actually here in our printer lab. We have some printers behind us. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of how to choose your printer, what you're going to kind of look for at first, kind of on a high level. So we break it down into three, right? So kind of the three main categories. What would be the three kind of overarching printers that we look at?
So the three main printers we're going to look at, we've got continuous inkjet or CIJ, your thermal line, which is a TIJ product or thermal inkjet. That is our mobile. Actually, it's a 1-inch mobile, interestingly. And then over here, this is your Piezo DoD or a high-res drop on demand. So those are the three products we're going to talk about, Mark.
Yep, great. So there's our kind of overarching. A lot of differences, and we base those differences on things. In fact, our people are pretty knowledgeable on kind of guiding people through, but a lot of people like to learn on their own, so that's part of the reason we're doing this. So let's kind of go through and maybe give me like 3 reasons, maybe 3 to 5, whatever, of why you would choose the I'll call it the beast over here.
Okay.
This is our duracode continuous inkjet. Why would someone go towards CIJ over anything else?
Okay. So typically CIJ is the most versatile because of its throw distance. Not only its throw distance, but also the ability to run a lot of different types of inks through it.
Okay.
So if you have, let's say for example, you're doing an application where you have a pre or a post process, like a wash down with alcohol or plasma treat or something like that, CIJ or continuous inkjet is going to offer you the most versatility in that application.
Awesome. And so real quick for some of us, because I'm a little more layman's than a lot of people, you talk about throw distance. You're talking about throwing of the ink.
Correct.
And then what does that mean from the printer in terms of space, and the ink is going from the printhead to whatever it's on?
Yeah.
What kind of space are we talking about?
So what we're looking at is probably up to about a 1/2 inch effectively. And what that allows you to do is to print onto irregular surfaces or even products that aren't moving so nicely, that aren't delivered really well.
Right. I think you showed me once like a pharmaceutical bottle or like a ibuprofen where the bottom was curved like that.
Absolutely.
That's ideal for that, right?
Yeah, because you got that velocity of the drop and a much bigger drop than you would with TIJ.
I got you. All right. So that's interesting, and I do know that a very popular product to use in the industry, right? CIJ is very widely used.
For all of the new, I would say new developments in laser as well as TIJ, CIJ still enjoys the lion's share of the market in coding marking.
Awesome. Okay, so you mentioned TIJ. Let's move to that. I'll hold the guy here. As our wizard said, this is the mobile version. The printer's actually a little rectangle in here. Quite different from our CIJ here, but maybe a little bit on why someone would choose a TIJ printer and what they're useful for.
Sure. So I think, in the world of TIJ, what you're really looking for to fit an application would be a product that's really well delivered and that is typically flat in nature. This particular model, if somebody wants to pick this up real quick and say print on a box in their production process, but it's not necessarily automated, say it's sitting out on the open floor, and you want to get a quick swipe on it and put a barcode on it, it's the perfect product for that. And it does come in a 1/2 inch and 1 inch width. Now, the other thing that's important about TIJ is, unlike CIJ, it's basically zero maintenance, because when you change out the cartridge, you get a new print engine with it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you don't get that with CIJ because CIJ is a much more complicated technology that is going to do a lot more for you with regard to the things we talked about earlier. The throw distance, the ability to run aggressive inks through it to meet different applications.
Yeah, and I think you can see that we're talking about a cartridge, got a much larger type of cartridge here for CIJ, and then the space for the TIJ. Obviously you see the difference in the machine, but the space for the cartridge is much smaller, so much smaller footprint. So I could see how.
Yeah, and the other big difference is that you're going to get a much higher DPI or a much higher resolution with a TIJ, depending on how you configure the encoder. Right now, this is actually set up, and you can see it. That's set up for a 400 DPI, and CIJ is typically at 50 DPI, so probably between 50 and 75, depending on drop size and the array that you use.
Awesome. Okay, so last one is our high resolution. I think I've heard a lot of names. Well, maybe it's the name of the head I've heard.
Sure.
This is where I get a little more layman for me. So maybe we can talk about high res. Now you mentioned this is kind of high. I mean, 400 DPI is pretty high res.
Sure.
So a little bit about maybe what people are using this high res for, and the different size availability on that. I know it comes in sizes.
Yeah, so we actually, in this line right here, which is our Precision series, we actually have an 18 millimeter and a 72 millimeter. And the 72 millimeter has a Seiko non-wetting engine in it. And what that means is that it doesn't have to circulate and wet the engine in order to provide ink flow to the engine. So you don't get that typical dripping that you get with some of the other high-res DoD heads. And you would use these typically in applications where you're outer case coating and want to eliminate a label. They give you pretty high resolutions, anywhere from probably 300 to 600, depending on what kind of engine is in it. Now, the other thing to consider is cost of operations as well. Certainly between these two technologies, there's a premium on this ink because it is in a cartridge. So your cost of operations on this might be a little higher over time.
Yeah.
But out of the box, you know, for a couple $1,000s, you're up and running, versus here, you're probably looking at a full solution installed and everything somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 7 or 8. So a difference there, but then your ink costs here are going to be a bit lower.
Yeah. And am I right in that a lot of people are, you're like, for the case coating and box coating side, very common. A lot of people will either go away from labels or choose not to use labels, and they want to print directly on a case or a box or something like that. That TIJ and high res both usually tackle those more than anything.
Yeah,
I should say not more than anything, but more than CIJ would ever do.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point, Mark. In reality, what you're probably looking at, the differentiator is, if something needs a high resolution readable barcode and it's traveling, let's say, overseas, right? And you need that code to be readable for the long term, and you need that high contrast, you're going to go with label. Given the ability to be able to print on the outside of the box without having to slap a label on it for those lower resolution where you don't need that necessarily that high contrast that's provided with label.
Awesome. Good job. Thank you, Wizard.
Thank you.
Very good. Look for more wizardry in the future, and we'll dig down a little bit deeper into the technologies and make sure everybody's informed.
Happy Halloween.